Hello, Yu-Gi-Oh players, and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0. I feel kind of like a nature show host, more than a Yu-Gi-Oh host right now. I like the lighting out here at the moment. I am enjoying the sunlight, so I figured I would sit out here while I do my video today. So today I want to talk about, well, this is going to be a very long lead up to my talking about side decking. So it strikes me that Yu-Gi-Oh players have this amazing skill to complain about any format that they're in. Like, no matter what the format is, there is some, or even a large contingent most of the time, of players who are totally convinced or want to try to convince the rest of the world or whatever that the format is totally devoid of skill. Anybody can win. You can just throw cards together and kind of throw them at your opponent, and that will produce victories somehow. And my personal opinion on that is that the people who do that much complaining tend to be the people with the relative lack of skill of the bunch um, well, because clearly they wouldn't be complaining about it if they had actually been playing at their best and been playing with other good players, and doing decently. To be fair, there is a difference in skill between faster and slower formats. It is true that a faster format makes it more likely that one person can open with an amazingly devastating play, one that an opponent cannot recover from, and that takes skill away from it. But even with the Dragon Ruler Mirror match, um, there is an extreme amount of skill going into deck building, because I don't know if you guys watched Worlds or not, but there was a spectacular amount of techiness in the way that people built their Dragon Rulers at Worlds. They were all very different ways of running the same deck. Like, of course, they did all use the same basic strategy with the dragons and the babies and whatever, but they all had very different ways of backing up that strategy, of leading into it. Especially at the higher levels, there is still a lot of skill involved in a fast format, and although I think there's a degree more skill in a slow format, you still have the same kinds of possibilities in the slow format, having an opponent open up with a play that you view, I suppose, as skillless because it's so easy. Case in point, the way that people complain about windups in the shock lock combo. While it's more, while that is still possible, of course, it is easier to stop a play like that during a slow format. Now, one of the biggest complaints that we get having to do with skilllessness um, in a slow format is that people, in their wild ability to exaggerate, say, "Oh my god, it is impossible to side deck in a slow format. Anything can top," which means there's nothing you can do to predict how you're going to side deck. And I think that I can't even properly imitate them because it's so stupid. Um, and they're basically like, there's absolutely no skill in the format. We might as well not use a side deck because our side deck doesn't work against like half the decks in the format because we can't plan for all of the decks that are going to be played. And this is actually what I'm talking about when I say that most of these people are the skillless people, because if you can't side deck for a slow format, chances are you're not that good at the game. And um I don't want to set that precedent like I'm going to be all snooty in this video, because this video once again is in helping to plan side decks for this format. So I don't want to say like if you're having issues side decking for this for a slow format, then you're a bad player or whatever. But if it's so bad to the point that you just complain about how it's totally impossible, chances are you can't do it. Anyway, I digress. Why don't I get to talking about actually siding during a slow format? Now, there's a difference in how you combat plays during a slow format from during a fast format. In a fast format, lockdown is the most important thing, because let's face it, those one-for-one kind of knockouts of opponents' crucial cards don't work, because in a faster format, they're just going to come right back from that play. Um, so, for instance, even if you bottom list a Dracosac, they're probably just going to summon another during the same turn. However, if you bottomless a I'm trying to think of a good example. If you bottomless Lavalval chain against Infernities at a crucial time, chances are you're going to have an easier time beating your opponent. So in a faster format, lockdown is really important. One for ones don't help. In a slower format, things that stop a play for a turn are not as potent. The reason being, in these faster formats like the Dragon Ruler Mirror Match, you see people doing the 3 Maxi 3 Veiler, because if you Maxi against an opponent and they're forced to stop, then it is almost guaranteed that you can follow up on that Veiler. That if you Veiler their Big Eye, next turn you can Big Eye their Big Eye, which means that you have followed up on that Veiler. In a format like, in a slower format, it's less of a guarantee that if you Veiler an opponent's monster, you're going to be able to ensure that they don't use that monster next turn, or that you can take advantage of that extra turn you get from using the Veiler. Which is why when you look at YCS Toronto, many of the decks, in fact most of the decks that topped, didn't have a full lineup of the hand traps. Most of them ran 2 and 2 instead of 3 and 3, or even 3 and 2. Some people only ran one of the two. There was I believe Sarosha's Mermail deck ran the 3 Maxi but no Veilers, and there was the Fire Fist deck that ran 2 Veilers and no Maxi. So hand traps are less potent in a slower format because, I mean, with the exception of facing things like wind-ups and the occasional Dragon Plant, the occasional Dragon Plant play will be hurt by Maxi or whatever. But really in a slower format, Maxi, slowing your opponent down with Maxi or Veiler becomes less of a surefire way to gain advantage over your opponent. Instead, once again, we come back to lockdown. Now, in the faster formats, when you use a lockdown card, you have to use it fast, and you have to hit them fast and hit them hard. When you're playing against dragons in the earlier formats, of course, last format was the only other earlier dragon format, you had to hit that Imperial Iron Wall button before they could make any plays. In this format, if you're going to use Imperial Iron Wall, you can wait. You can wait for them to do something stupid, like, they can discard their Redox and I don't know, something else to use Redox's effect, and at that point you can hit them with the Imperial Iron Wall. They've gone at minus, and now you can take advantage of that. If you use your Imperial Iron Wall too early, they're probably going to make sure that they can get around it before they make any plays, because it's a slower format, and they can afford to do that. So as far as building your side deck, this is the important part. The balance you have to get is between broadness and being potent. If you have a potent side deck against the decks that you really have issues with, you're going to run into a lot of rogue matches that you can't play against. If you go too broad, then you're going to be playing against your worst matchups, and you're not going to be able to do anything. So the key is to hit the broad spectrum of decks that you're likely to play against, while putting in some key cards, while balancing it with key cards that take down the decks that you really have issues with. This is why I said when I was talking about YCS Toronto that cards like Imperial Iron Wall, Gozen Match, Rivalry of Warlords, Vanity's Emptiness, these cards are especially crucial this format, because even though they worked last format, there were definitely the other ways of stopping plays. The hand traps were very effective, things like that. In this format, the reason why those cards are so amazing is because they have a broad variety of uses. If you use Gozen Match against dragons, it's also going to work against, I forgot the deck that I was thinking of when I said that it was going to work against something else. If you use Imperial Iron Wall against spellbooks, that also works against dragons. It has a degree of advantage against mermails, although of course there are much better things you could be using. If you use Macro, that hits a large number of things. So you can put in those cards. As long as you can put those cards into your deck, They can cover a wide variety of things. And then you just have to focus on what cards hit the critical plays of the decks that you really have issues with. You want to have that balance. And I think, in my opinion, the best lineup is to have 10 to 12, 10 to 11 cards that are for the broader anti-meta-ness, broader side decking power. And then you want the last 5 cards in your side deck to be saved for that deck that really hits you hard. Sometimes you only need 3, and then you can go up to 12 with the broader cards. But in my opinion, 10 and 5 is the perfect balance, because with 10 cards headed toward the broader thing, that allows you things like play sets of Imperial Iron Wall, and then maybe a D-Fissure, and a couple of Gozens or whatever. While if you went lower than that, you wouldn't be able to hit enough decks with your broader cards, and if you went higher with that, it would take away from your ability to combat your worst matchups. So in my opinion, that is the best way to think about siding for a slow format, and if you do it like that, chances are you'll have a pretty easy time siding. You just have to know what the weaknesses are of the decks that you are going to have the most issues against, and you also have to know which cards you can side that will hit the largest number of decks and actually have a serious impact. So there you go, those are my thoughts. It's gotten a lot darker since I started this video, so I will let you guys go. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, let me know why, and then subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. I'm your host, the RJB0. I gotta lean in and sign in the awkward way that I always do. Thank you guys for watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual. I gotta jet, guys. See ya.